Some stories find us when we need them most. This is a tale of two weary souls meeting on a dusty Texas road in the summer of 1882, a drifter who had forgotten how to stay, and a young woman who had never been given the choice to leave. It is about the quiet courage it takes to trust again, and how sometimes the greatest journey is simply learning to stand still beside someone who sees you as you truly are. No grand adventures here. Just two ordinary folks discovering that home is not a place you find, it is a person you choose to stop running with. May this story bring you a measure of peace, the way a good cup of coffee and a familiar hymn can warm the spirit on a cool autumn evening. Eli Callahan had been counting the days since he last spoke to another human being. 17. Not that it mattered much. Words had become foreign things to him over the years, clumsy, unnecessary objects he had learned to live without. The road was simpler. The road asked nothing of him except to keep moving, and moving was the one thing Eli Callahan knew how to do. The late August sun hung low over the Texas hill country, bleeding orange and copper across the limestone ridges. Dust rose behind his wagon in lazy spirals, settling on his shoulders, his hat, the cracked leather of the seat beside him. Old Gideon plodded forward with the patience of a horse who had long since stopped caring about destinations. Eli shifted his weight, felt the familiar ache in his lower back from too many hours on the road. His canteen sloshed half empty against his thigh. Another hour, maybe two, before he would need to find water. There was a creek somewhere ahead. He remembered it from the last time he had passed through. 3 years ago or 4. Time had a way of blurring together when every day looked the same. He squinted against the sun, watching the road unfold before him like a faded ribbon someone had dropped and forgotten. That was when he saw her. At first, his mind refused to make sense of the shape. A pile of old clothes, perhaps, supplies fallen from another wagon. But as Gideon carried him closer, the shape resolved into something unmistakable. A woman, sitting alone on a wooden crate beside the road, 2 carpet bags at her feet, staring at the empty horizon with the stillness of someone who had been waiting so long she had forgotten how to move. Eli's hands tightened on the reins. The old stage depot stood behind her, a sorry excuse for a building now, its whitewash peeling like dead skin, the hand-painted sign reading Stage Depot hanging crooked from a single nail. He knew this place. Knew it had been abandoned for at least a year, maybe longer. No coaches had run this route since the railroad pushed through 40 miles north. She had to know that. Didn't she? He studied her as he approached, cataloging details the way a man learns to do when he has spent too much time alone. Young mid-20s, he reckoned, thin in a way that spoke of meals skipped rather than constitution. Her dress was calico, faded blue flowers on gray cotton, worn at the elbows and patched at the hem. Good stitching, though careful work. Someone had taught her that, or she had taught herself. Her boots told a harder story. Cracked leather, heels worn down unevenly, laces replaced with what looked like strips torn from a petticoat. Those boots had walked a long way, too long. But it was her hands that caught his attention. The way she gripped the handles of her carpetbags, knuckles white, fingers curled like someone clinging to the edge of a cliff, like those bags were the only things keeping her from falling into something she could not name. Gideon's hooves clopped against the hard-packed dirt. The woman's head turned. Their eyes met. Eli had seen a lot of things in his 41 years. He had seen men die on battlefields, seen women weep over graves too small for adults. He had seen hope, and he had seen despair, and he had learned to tell the difference even when they wore the same face. What he saw in her eyes was neither. It was something emptier, something that had moved past fear, past hope, past despair, and settled into a kind of exhaustion that went deeper than bones. It was the look of a person who had used up everything she had just to get this far, and now sat with nothing left, waiting for whatever came next. The smell of dust and dry grass hung thick in the air. Somewhere in the distance, Cicadas droned their endless summer song. A hot breeze carried the scent of sage and sun-baked earth, the particular perfume of Texas in late August. He should keep moving. The thought arrived clean and clear, the way good sense always did. She was not his problem, not his responsibility. He had his own road, his own troubles, his own empty spaces that needed no company. A man learned early that taking on other people's burdens only added weight to a load already too heavy to carry. His hands pulled the reins. Gideon stopped. Eli sat there for a long moment, looking at her, feeling the familiar war between what he should do and what he was about to do. The sun beat down on his shoulders. Dust settled in the sudden stillness. Somewhere behind them, a mockingbird called out a song meant for no one. The woman's lips moved. Her voice came out cracked and dry, barely louder than the whisper of wind through dead grass. "Please," she swallowed. Tried again. "Please. Don't leave me here." The words hung in the air between them, fragile as spun glass. Eli Callahan had spent the last 15 years building walls. He had learned to walk past need, to close his ears to asking, to keep his eyes fixed on the road ahead and let the world blur at the edges. It was the only way to survive when you had nothing left to give. But something in those words, something in the way she said, "Please," not begging, not demanding, just asking. The way you ask for water when you are dying of thirst. The way you ask for mercy when you have no right to expect it. He climbed down from the wagon. His boots hit the ground with a soft thud. He reached for the canteen at his hip, unscrewed the cap, and walked toward her with the slow, deliberate movements of a man approaching a wounded creature. She watched him come. Her eyes tracked his hands, watching for danger. He realized. Calculating distance. Ready to run even though they both knew she had nowhere to go. He stopped 3 feet away, held out the canteen. "Water," he said. His voice came out rusty from disuse, like a gate hinge that had not been oiled in years. "You look like you could use some." She stared at the canteen for a long moment. Her throat moved as she swallowed. Then, slowly, she reached out and took it from his hand. Their fingers did not touch. She drank carefully, small sips, not gulping, the way someone drinks when they have learned that water is precious and uncertain. Her eyes never left his face, watching, waiting for the catch, the condition, the price that always came attached to kindness. Eli said nothing. He stood with his hands loose at his sides and let her drink. When she finished, she lowered the canteen and held it back toward him. "Thank you." Her voice was stronger now, still rough. But there was something underneath it, a dignity that poverty and exhaustion had not quite managed to strip away. "How long you been waiting here?" he asked. 2 days. She glanced at the abandoned depot, its windows dark and empty like eyes that had stopped seeing. There was supposed to be a stage. "Hasn't been a stage through here in over a year." "I know that now." Silence settled between them. The mockingbird sang again, persistent and oblivious. The smell of Gideon's sweat mixed with dust and the faint sweetness of prairie grass. "Where are you headed?" Eli asked. She looked at him for a long moment. Something flickered in her eyes, a reckoning, a weighing of risks. Then her shoulders moved in something that might have been a shrug if she had the energy for it. "Anywhere," she said. "Anywhere but back." The words landed in his chest like stones dropped into still water. Anywhere but back. He knew that feeling. Knew it the way he knew the ache in his joints. The weight of his own name. The sound of his own breathing in the dark. He had been running from back for 15 years. Still running. Would probably run until his legs gave out or his heart stopped or both. "Got room on the wagon," he heard himself say. Can take you as far as the next town, 30 miles, give or take. She blinked. For a moment, the exhaustion lifted from her face, replaced by something that looked almost like confusion, as if kindness was a language she had forgotten how to translate. Why? The question caught him off guard. He opened his mouth, closed it again, searched for an answer and found nothing but empty space where reasons should be. Don't rightly know, he admitted. She studied him, really studied him, the way you study a map when you are lost and desperate. He felt seen in a way he had not felt in years, and it made him want to look away. He did not. Finally. She nodded. Once. A small, careful movement. All right. She stood, and he saw how much the effort cost her. Her legs trembled. Her hand shot out to steady herself against the crate, but she did not ask for help, and he did not offer it. Instead, she bent down and picked up her carpet bags herself. He noticed. He respected it. She carried her bags to the wagon and set them in the back, next to his supplies fence posts, coiled rope, a sack of flour gone soft with humidity. Then she climbed up onto the seat, moving with the careful precision of someone conserving every ounce of strength. Eli climbed up beside her. The seat creaked under their combined weight. He gathered the reins, clicked his tongue at Gideon. The horse began to move. Behind them, the abandoned depot grew smaller, its crooked signs swinging slightly in a breeze that had not been there before. Ahead, the road stretched on toward the setting sun, dust rising in their wake like the ghosts of all the miles they had yet to travel. Neither of them spoke, but the silence felt different now, less empty, less alone. To be continued. Before we continue, I'd love to know which city you're watching from. Let's get back to the story. The canteen felt cool against Clara's palms. She turned it slowly, watching the last light catch on the dented tin. Her throat still burned from 2 days of nothing but spit and dust, but she forced herself to drink slowly. Small sips. The way you learn when you have gone without. The water tasted of metal and leather. It was the sweetest thing she had ever known. The stranger sat beside her on the wagon seat, close enough that she could smell him sweat. Hoarse. The faint bite of tobacco he had not smoked in days. Not unpleasant. Just real. Just human. He had not asked her name, had not asked where she came from or what she was running from. Most men would have demanded answers before offering water, before offering a seat, before offering anything at all. This one just drove. Gideon's hooves beat a steady rhythm against the packed earth. The wagon creaked and swayed, its wooden bones groaning with each rut in the road. Clara's hands tightened around the canteen as she studied the man from the corner of her eye. 40, maybe older. Hard to tell with the beard and the sun damage etched into his skin like lines on a map. His hands on the reins were calloused, scarred across the knuckles. Working hands, hands that knew how to build things and mend things in equal measure. You got a name? His voice startled her. Rough, unused, like a door that had not been opened in a long while. Clara. She paused, the surname catching in her throat. Clara Whitmore. He nodded, did not offer his own. The silence stretched between them. The sun dropped lower, painting the limestone ridges in shades of rust and amber. Clara's stomach cramped hunger, and nerves twisted together until she could not tell which was which. The man back there, she heard herself say. At that depot. What man? There wasn't one. She stared at the road ahead, at the dust rising gold in the fading light. But there could have been. The one who bought me. The words came out flat, matter of fact, like she was talking about weather or the price of flour. The stranger's hands shifted on the reins, a small movement, barely visible. Bought you? Auction. Clara's fingers found a loose thread on her sleeve. Pulled. 3 weeks ago, place called Miller's Crossing. She waited for the questions, the judgment, the look men always got when they realized what she was, what she had been reduced to. He said nothing, just drove. The thread snapped between her fingers. Clara looked down at the broken strand, then up at the road unwinding before them like a promise she was afraid to believe. "He'll be looking for me," she said quietly. "You should know that." To be continued. The creek appeared just as the last copper light bled from the sky. Eli spotted it first, a dark line cutting through the limestone, cottonwood trees hunched along its banks like old men guarding a secret. He guided Gideon off the road without explanation, and Clara said nothing. She had learned, somewhere in the past 3 weeks, that questions were luxuries she could not afford. The wagon wheels crunched over dry grass. Crickets fell silent at their approach, then started up again behind them, a rising wave of sound that followed their passage like whispered gossip. Eli pulled up beneath the largest cottonwood and set the brake. The wagon groaned, settling into stillness. "We'll camp here." 3 words, the most he had spoken in an hour. Clara climbed down before he could offer help, not that he seemed inclined to. Her legs wobbled when they hit the ground, muscles screaming from 2 days of sitting on that wooden crate, barely moving, barely breathing. She steadied herself against the wagon wheel and waited for the dizziness to pass. When she looked up, Eli was already moving. She watched him work, watched the economy of his movements as he unhitched Gideon, led him to the water, gathered fallen branches from beneath the cottonwoods. No wasted motion. No hesitation. A man who had made camp 1,000 times, in 1,000 places, always alone. "I can help." The words came out before she could stop them. Eli paused, a bundle of dry wood in his arms, looked at her. Something moved behind his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or curiosity. Hard to tell in the fading light. "Fire needs kindling," he said. "Small stuff. Dry." Clara nodded and moved toward the tree line. The grass was cool against her ankles, still holding the memory of last week's rain. She bent to gather twigs, snapping them between her fingers to test for dryness. The familiar motion steadied her. She had done this before back when she was young, back when her father was still alive, and they would camp on the way to market. His laughter rising with the wood smoke into the darkening sky. That was a long time ago. Another life. She carried the kindling back to where Eli had cleared a patch of ground near the creek bank. He had arranged the larger branches in a careful pyramid, leaving space at the center. Clara knelt beside him and fed the smaller twigs into the gap, their hands moving in unconscious coordination. Eli struck a match. The flame caught, flickered, grew. Orange light pushed back the darkness. Shadows danced across the cottonwood bark. The fire crackled and popped as it found its voice, and Clara felt something loosen in her chest, some knot she had not known she was carrying. The smell of wood smoke filled the air, mixing with the green scent of the creek and the dry sweetness of prairie grass. It smelled like safety, like the suppers of her childhood, when the world was small and her father's voice was the only sound that mattered. "Got beans," Eli said. "Salt pork. Coffee. I haven't eaten in 2 days." She had not meant to say it. The words just slipped out, carried on the smoke. Eli's hands stilled on the saddlebag he was unpacking. He did not look at her, did not offer sympathy or ask questions. Just pulled out a tin plate, a cast-iron skillet blackened by years of use, a cloth bag of coffee beans gone dark with age. "Sit," he said. "I'll cook." Clara sat. The fire painted warmth across her face. She pulled her knees to her chest, wrapped her arms around them, made herself as small as she could, watched the flames, listened to the sizzle of salt pork hitting the hot skillet, the bubble of beans warming in their own juice. The smell hit her like a fist. Her stomach clenched. Saliva flooded her mouth. She pressed her lips together, swallowed hard, refused to let the hunger show on her face. She had learned that too in the weeks since Miller's Crossing, how to hide need, how to make herself invisible, how to exist in the spaces between other people's wants without drawing attention. Eli scraped food onto the tin plate, held it out to her. "Eat slow," he said. "Your stomach won't know what to do with it otherwise." Clara took the plate. The metal was warm against her palms. She looked down at the beans, the strips of pork glistening with fat, and something burned behind her eyes. She blinked it back. "Thank you," Eli grunted, scraped his own portion onto another plate, sat down across the fire from her, close enough to talk, far enough to give her space. They ate in silence. Clara forced herself to chew slowly, to savor each bite even as her body screamed for more. Faster. Now. The beans were simple salt and fat and the faint sweetness of molasses. The pork was tough, stringy, probably old. It was the best meal she had ever tasted. When the plates were empty, Eli produced the coffee pot, filled it from the creek, the water running cold and clear over his hands, set it on a flat stone at the fire's edge. "Going to take a while," he said. Clara nodded. The food sat heavy in her stomach, warm and strange after so long without. She watched the coffee pot, watched the water begin to stir, listened to the creek murmur its endless song just beyond the firelight. "Eli." She looked up. He was watching her across the flames, his face half in shadow, the lines around his eyes deeper in the flickering light. "That's my name. Eli Callahan. Figured you should know." Clara let the name settle in her mind. Eli Callahan. It suited him plain and solid. No pretense. The kind of name you could trust. "Why did you stop?" she asked. "Back there, at the depot." The fire crackled. An owl called somewhere in the darkness beyond the cottonwoods, low and mournful. Eli stared into the flames for a long moment before answering. "Don't know. That's not an answer. It's the only one I got." Clara studied him, the lines etched by sun and wind and sorrow, the gray threading through his beard, the way he held himself, shoulders curved inward, like a man carrying weight no one else could see. "Most men would have kept going," she said. "Most men would have, but you didn't." Eli picked up a stick, poked at the fire. Sparks rose into the darkness, swirling upward like fireflies searching for home. "My mama used to say something." His voice was quiet, almost lost in the crackle of flames. "Said the Lord puts people in our path for a reason. Said it's not our job to understand the reason, just to stop when we're called to stop." Clara felt the words land in her chest, unexpected, gentle. "You believe that?" Eli shrugged. "Don't know what I believe anymore, but I stopped. That's all I know for certain." The coffee began to bubble. Eli lifted it from the fire with a folded cloth, poured dark liquid into 2 tin cups, handed one to Clara. She wrapped her fingers around the cup, felt the heat seep into her palms. The coffee was strong and bitter, no sugar, no cream. It tasted like waking up. "The man who bought me," she said. "His name is Silas Crenshaw." Eli's cup paused halfway to his lips. "He owns a ranch east of Miller's Crossing. Cattle, mostly. Some horses." Clara stared into her coffee, watching the firelight dance on its dark surface. "I was supposed to be his wife. That's what the auction papers said. But I saw his other wife, the one before me." The fire popped. A log shifted, sending up another shower of sparks. "Saw the bruises on her arms, the way she flinched when he raised his voice." Clara's voice stayed flat, steady. Saw the grave behind the barn. 2. Small one. Child-sized. No marker. Eli said nothing, but his jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath his beard. I waited 3 days, Clara continued. Watched. Learned the layout. Then I took his mule-old thing, half lame, but it got me to the next town. Sold it for $12. Bought a stage ticket that was supposed to take me west. She laughed, a small, bitter sound that held no humor. Didn't know the stage line had shut down. The owl called again. Closer now. The creek sang its quiet song, and the fire whispered secrets to the night. So you're a thief, Eli said. Not accusation, just fact. I reckon I am. And he'll be looking for his property. Clara flinched at the word, could not help it. Yes, she said. He will. Eli drained his coffee, set the cup down on a flat rock, stared into the fire for a long moment, and Clara watched the flames reflect in his eyes, orange and gold, dancing. Well, he said finally, I've been called a lot of things in my life. Horse thief ain't one of them yet, but I suppose there's a first time for everything. Clara blinked. What? That mule you took, the one that got you this far. Eli met her eyes across the fire. Way I see it, that mule saved your life. And now you're sitting at my fire, drinking my coffee, and telling me a man is coming to take you back to something worse than death. He picked up his stick again, drew a line in the dirt. I spent 15 years running from my own past. Never once stopped to help someone else run from theirs. His voice was quiet, rough. Maybe it's time I started. Clara's throat tightened. You don't owe me anything. No, I don't. Then why? Because you asked me not to leave you. Eli's eyes were steady on hers, holding her gaze without wavering. And I didn't. The fire crackled between them. The night pressed close, thick with crickets and owl song and the whisper of wind through cottonwood leaves. The creek murmured on, patient and eternal. Clara opened her mouth to respond, closed it, opened it again. Before she could speak, Gideon whinnied, sharp, urgent. Eli's head snapped toward the darkness beyond the fire's reach. His hand moved to his hip empty. No gun, but the instinct was there, hardwired from years of living on the edge. Clara's heart slammed against her ribs. What is it? She whispered. Eli held up one hand. Quiet. He rose slowly, silently, and moved toward the edge of the firelight. Clara watched his silhouette merge with the darkness, watched him disappear into the shadows beneath the cottonwoods. Silence, then hoofbeats, distant, faint, but unmistakable, coming from the east, coming from the direction of Miller's Crossing. Clara's blood turned to ice. She stared into the darkness where Eli had vanished, straining to hear, straining to see. The hoofbeats grew louder, closer, 2 horses, maybe 3, moving fast. Then Eli's voice, low and urgent from somewhere in the shadows. Put out that fire, now. To be continued, hey. The hoofbeats passed in the night. Clara pressed herself flat against the creek bank, cold mud soaking through her dress. Her face turned toward the darkness above. She could feel Eli beside her, not touching, but close enough that she caught the rhythm of his breathing. Slow, controlled. The breathing of a man who had hidden before. 3 riders. She counted them by the sound, the heavy drumbeat of hooves on packed earth, the jingle of bridle metal, the low murmur of voices she could not quite make out. They passed on the road above, maybe 50 yards from where the wagons sat dark and silent beneath the cottonwoods. They did not stop. Clara held her breath until her lungs burned, held it until the hoofbeats faded to nothing, swallowed by distance and the endless Texas night. Held it until Eli's hand touched her shoulder, a brief pressure. There, and gone. They're past. She exhaled. The air came out shaky, ragged. Was it him? Don't know. Eli rose slowly, brushing mud from his trousers. Could be anyone. Cattle drivers, rangers, men heading nowhere in particular. But his voice was careful, measured. The voice of a man who did not believe his own words. Clara pushed herself up from the creek bank. Her hands trembled as she wiped mud from her face. The night air felt cold now, the sweat on her skin turning to ice. We should move, she said. Not tonight. Moon's too thin. Break a wheel in a rut and we're stuck till morning anyway. Eli looked toward the road, his profile sharp against the stars. They're moving fast. If it was him, if they're looking for you, they'll be 20 miles gone by sunrise. And if they double back, then we deal with it. Clara wanted to argue. Wanted to climb onto that wagon and drive until the horses gave out, until they reached somewhere anywhere that Silas Crenshaw could not find her. But her legs would not hold her. Her body had reached some limit she had not known existed, and now it was making demands she could not refuse. I'll keep watch, Eli said. Get some sleep. I can't. You can. His voice was firm but not unkind. You're no good to either of us exhausted. The wagon bed's got blankets. Use them. Clara opened her mouth to protest, closed it. The truth was, he was right. She could barely stand, barely think. The fear was still there, coiled tight in her chest. But exhaustion was stronger. She climbed into the wagon bed, found the blankets he had mentioned rough wool, smelling of horse and dust and something faintly like cedar. She pulled them around herself and lay down among the fence posts and rope coils, the scratchy wool warm against her skin. Above her, through gaps in the canvas cover, stars scattered across the black sky like salt spilled on a dark tablecloth. Sleep came faster than she expected. Dawn broke gray and soft. Clara woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Gideon's patient chewing. She lay still for a moment, disoriented, her mind struggling to piece together where she was and how she had gotten there. Then memory returned the road, the fire, the hoofbeats in the dark, and she sat up so fast her head spun. Eli crouched by a small fire, the coffee pot balanced on a ring of stones. He looked up at her movement, nodded once. Sleep all right. Better than I should have. She climbed down from the wagon, her muscles protesting every movement. The creek glittered in the early light, mist rising from its surface like spirits departing for somewhere warmer. She walked to its edge, knelt, and splashed cold water on her face. The shock of it drove the last fog from her mind. When she returned to the fire, Eli handed her a cup of coffee without comment. She wrapped her fingers around it, grateful for the warmth seeping into her cold hands. "Those riders," she said. "Did they come back?" "No." Eli poured his own cup, the steam rising in lazy spirals. "Heard them again around midnight, still heading west, moving fast." Clara sipped her coffee. It was bitter, strong, exactly what she needed. The heat spread through her chest, pushing back the chill of the morning. "Thank you," she said, "for keeping watch." Eli shrugged. Wasn't sleeping anyway. They ate a quick breakfast, more beans, some hard biscuits from Eli's supplies that had to be soaked in coffee before they were soft enough to chew. Clara ate without tasting, her mind already racing ahead to the road, the miles, the distance she needed to put between herself and Miller's Crossing. By the time the sun cleared the limestone ridges, painting the world in shades of gold and amber, they were moving. The second day was different. Clara felt it in the air between them. Something shifted, loosened. The silence was still there, but it had lost its edge. She found herself watching the landscape instead of watching Eli, letting her eyes trace the roll of the hills, the scatter of live oaks and mesquite. The occasional flash of a jackrabbit startled from the brush. The morning sun warmed her shoulders through the thin cotton of her dress. A meadowlark sang somewhere to the left, its song bright and liquid. The smell of sage and warm earth filled her lungs with each breath. "You from Texas?" Eli asked. The question surprised her. She had grown used to his silence, had almost come to expect it. "San Antonio," she said. "Originally. Family. Gone." The word came out flat. "Fever took my parents when I was 12. Spent the next 10 years at St. Mary's Home for Girls." Eli nodded slowly, did not offer sympathy. She appreciated that. "What about you?" she asked. "Where are you from?" "Nowhere, mostly." He adjusted his grip on the reins, the leather creaking softly. "Born in Tennessee. Family had a farm outside Nashville. Dogwood trees everywhere, they'd bloom white in spring, like snow that didn't melt. Then the war came." Clara waited. The wagon creaked. Gideon's hooves beat their steady rhythm against the hard-packed earth. "Enlisted at 17, Eli continued. "Came back 4 years later. Farm was gone. Parents were gone. Everything I'd known." He trailed off, shook his head. "Well, it wasn't there anymore." "The woman you were supposed to marry." Eli's jaw tightened. "Heard about that. Did you? You mentioned it last night when you said you'd been running for 15 years. He was quiet for a long moment. The road stretched ahead of them, dust rising in lazy spirals, the horizon shimmering with heat. "Her name was Sarah," he said finally. "Sarah Jennings. We were engaged before I left. I wrote her every week, when I could get letters out. She wrote back, said she'd wait." His voice was flat, empty. "She didn't. I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was a long time ago." Eli shrugged, but his shoulders stayed tense. "Came home. Found her married to my best friend. Baby on the way. They'd been together 2 years by then." Clara tried to imagine it returning from war to find everything changed. Everyone moved on, your own life erased like writing on a dusty window. She could not quite get there. Her own losses were different, but the shape of the grief, the hollow weight of it that she understood. "So you left," she said. "So I left. Been leaving ever since." Eli glanced at her, his eyes unreadable beneath the brim of his hat. Easier to keep moving. Don't have to feel much when you're always on the way to somewhere else. Clara considered that. Considered the years stretching behind him, the endless roads, the countless nights alone by countless fires. It sounded exhausting. It sounded familiar. "I was supposed to be a teacher," she said, "at St. Mary's. They trained us for service teaching, nursing, domestic work. I had 2 years left before I was meant to take my vows. Vows. Not marriage. Service. To the orphanage. To the church." Clara watched a hawk circle overhead, riding the thermals, patient and free. Then the funding ran out. The orphanage closed. And suddenly there were 40 of us with nowhere to go. Eli's hands tightened on the reins, slight, almost imperceptible. "That's how you ended up at the auction." "Not directly. First, there was a year of trying to find work, trying to find a place that would take us in. But a woman alone, no family, no references." Clara shook her head. "Doors close fast. And the auction. A man named Becker. He came to the boarding house where 6 of us were staying, said he knew of opportunities out west. Ranchers looking for wives. Honest work. Honest pay." Her voice hardened like cooling iron. "He didn't mention the auction block. Didn't mention that we'd be sold to the highest bidder like horses at a livestock fair." The hawk dove, disappearing into the tall grass. A moment later, It rose again, something small and dark struggling in its talons. By the time I understood what was happening, it was too late. Silas Crenshaw paid $40 for me, signed papers that said I belonged to him. Clara's hands curled into fists in her lap. I was his property, legal and binding. Not anymore. She looked at Eli. His profile was hard against the morning sky, his jaw set like stone. Not anymore, he repeated. Whatever those papers say, whatever that man thinks he owns, you're sitting on this wagon because you chose to, because you climbed up here of your own free will. He met her eyes. That means something. Clara felt the words settle into her chest. Warm, steady, like embers banked against the cold. It's been a long time since anyone gave me a choice, she said quietly. Well, Eli turned back to the road. Get used to it. The morning passed in easy conversation. Clara was surprised by how easily the words came, surprised by how much she had stored up in the weeks of silence. The months of watchful waiting. She told Eli about the orphanage, about the sisters who had raised her, about the small pleasures of teaching younger children to read. She told him about Sister Mary Frances, who smelled of lavender soap and always saved the last biscuit for her, about the vegetable garden behind the dormitory where she had grown tomatoes and peppers, her hands in the warm earth, the sun on her back. He told her about Tennessee, about the farm, about the way the dogwood trees bloomed white in spring, about his mother's cooking cornbread and buttermilk, fried chicken on Sundays, blackberry cobbler that melted on the tongue, about his father teaching him to plow a straight furrow, to read the weather in the clouds, to treat every creature with respect. They talked about nothing important, about favorite foods and hated chores, about the sound rain makes on a tin roof, about the smell of bread baking in a wood-fired oven. Small things, human things. The kind of talk that fills the spaces between strangers and slowly, imperceptibly, turns them into something else. Around midday, Eli pulled off the road near a stand of live oaks. They ate in the shade more biscuits, some dried beef, water from the creek they had camped by. Clara's stomach had remembered how to process food, and she ate with an appetite that surprised her. How much further to the next town, she asked. Cedar Springs. Another half day, maybe less. Eli squinted at the sun, measuring time the way farmers do. We'll reach it by evening. A Cedar Springs. The name meant nothing to her, but it sounded solid, real. A place with people and buildings, and the possibility of disappearing into a crowd. What will you do there, she asked, after you drop me off? Eli did not answer immediately. He chewed his dried beef slowly, staring at something in the middle distance only he could see. Haven't decided, he said finally. Got supplies to sell. Might stay a night. Resupply. Move on. To where? Does it matter? Clara considered the question, considered the man sitting across from her, his face shadowed by his hat brim, his hands still as they rested on his knees. It might, she said. Eli looked at her. Something flickered in his eyes, curiosity, wariness, something she could not name. Before he could respond, a sound cut through the stillness. Laughter. High and bright. Coming from somewhere ahead. Clara's head snapped toward the road. Eli was already on his feet, moving toward the tree line with that silent economy she had come to recognize. She followed, keeping low, her heart hammering against her ribs. Through the gaps in the oak branches, she could see the road. A wagon was approaching from the west, bigger than Eli's, painted blue, pulled by a matched pair of roans. A family. She could see them now, a man driving, a woman beside him, 2 children bouncing in the wagon bed. their laughter carrying across the summer air. Normal, harmless. Travelers. Like them. But something else caught her eye. Behind the family's wagon, maybe 200 yards back, a single rider followed at a distance, keeping pace. Not quite close enough to be traveling with them, not quite far enough to be coincidence. Clara's blood turned cold. She knew that horse, knew the way it moved, the distinctive white blaze on its chest like a streak of lightning frozen in place. It was Silas Crenshaw's stallion. To be continued, Clara's hand found Eli's arm. Her fingers dug into the fabric of his sleeve, knuckles white. She could not speak, could not breathe. The rider was still there 200 yards back, moving at an easy pace. That white-blazed stallion unmistakable even at this distance. "That's him," she whispered. "That's his horse." Eli did not move. His eyes tracked the rider, measuring distance, speed, direction. The family wagon rolled past their hiding spot, the children's laughter fading as they continued west. The rider followed, unhurried, patient, hunting. "He's not looking this way," Eli said quietly. "Hasn't seen us. Yet." The word hung between them like a held breath. Clara watched the rider disappear around a bend in the road, swallowed by the rolling hills. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her teeth. Every instinct screamed at her to run to climb on that wagon and drive until the horse dropped, until she reached the edge of the world, until we wait. Eli's voice cut through the panic, calm, steady. "We can't just... we wait." He turned to face her, and something in his eyes made her stop. "He's heading west. Same direction we're going. If we follow now, we drive straight into him." Clara's breath came in shallow gasps. "Then what do we do?" "Give him an hour. Let him get ahead. Then we move fast. Take the South Fork before Cedar Springs." Eli's jaw tightened. "There's another way into town, longer, but it'll put us behind him instead of in front. You know this area well enough." Clara forced herself to breathe. In, out, in, out. The panic receded slowly, replaced by something colder, harder. "He'll ask about me in town," she said. "He'll describe me. Someone will remember seeing a woman alone at that depot. Then we don't give them a woman alone." Eli met her eyes. "We give them a married couple, man and wife, heading west to settle new land." Clara blinked. "What?" "It's the story that makes sense. Man traveling with a woman. No wedding ring. No explanation that draws attention. Questions." Eli shrugged. "But a husband and wife, nobody looks twice." The logic was sound. Clara knew it was sound. But something about the word wife made her stomach clench. "I won't pretend to belong to another man," she said quietly. "Not again." Eli's expression shifted. Something moved behind his eyes, understanding. Maybe. Or recognition. "Not belong," he said. "Pretend. There's a difference." He paused. "And it's your choice. Always your choice. Say the word and I'll drop you at the edge of town. Ride in a different direction. You'll never see me again." Clara studied his face, the lines around his eyes, the gray in his beard, the way he held himself still, patient, waiting for her decision without pressure or expectation. She thought about the depot, about the 2 days of waiting, the endless hours of hoping and despairing, the moment when she had looked up and seen his wagon coming and known that she would either be saved or destroyed. And there was nothing she could do to influence which. She had been helpless then. She was not helpless now. "All right," she said. "We're married." They waited. An hour stretched into something longer, measured not by clocks but by the angle of the sun, the lengthening shadows, the gradual settling of Clara's heartbeat. She sat with her back against a live oak, watching the road through gaps in the branches, listening for hoofbeats that did not come. Eli checked the wagon, tightened straps, watered Gideon from a leather bucket, the old horse drinking deep and grateful. His movements were unhurried, methodical, the practiced routine of a man who had learned that panic solved nothing. Clara found herself watching him. "Why did you really stop?" she asked. Eli looked up from adjusting Gideon's harness. "Thought we covered this. You said you didn't know, but that's not an answer." Clara pulled her knees to her chest. "You've been alone for 15 years. You said yourself you learned to walk past need, to keep moving, to not get involved. So why me? Why that day?" The question hung in the air, Eli's hands stilled on the leather straps. "You want the truth?" "Yes." He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was lower, rougher. "I saw myself." Clara frowned. "What do you mean?" "Sitting there, waiting for something that wasn't coming, holding on to what little you had left like it was the only thing keeping you alive." Eli straightened, met her eyes. "I've been that person. Plenty of times. And every time, someone walked past, looked the other way, kept moving." He shrugged. Figured maybe it was time to be the one who stopped. Clara felt the words settle into her chest. Not comfortable, not easy, but true. "Thank you," she said quietly. Eli nodded, went back to the harness. They did not speak again until it was time to move. The South Fork was barely a road, more like a suggestion, two worn ruts cutting through the tall grass, disappearing into a landscape of limestone and mesquite. Eli guided Gideon onto it without hesitation, and Clara watched the main road fall away behind them, swallowed by distance and dust. The afternoon heat pressed down like a heavy hand. Sweat trickled between Clara's shoulder blades, soaking into the worn fabric of her dress. She pulled her bonnet lower, shielding her face from the sun, and tried not to think about the rider with the white-blazed horse. "Tell me about Cedar Springs," she said. "What kind of place is it? Small, 20 buildings, maybe less. General store, livery, church with a white steeple." Eli squinted at the horizon. "Good people. Mostly keep to themselves." "Will they ask questions?" Might not." He glanced at her. "Remember we're Mr. and Mrs. Callahan. Heading west to claim land near the Pecos. I'm a farmer looking to start fresh. You're my wife. We've been married 3 years. 3 years. Long enough to be settled. Short enough that we don't have children to explain." Eli's mouth quirked, almost a smile. "Keep it simple. The best stories are the ones closest to truth." Clara nodded, tried to imagine herself as Mrs. Callahan, a farmer's wife, 3 years married, a life completely different from the one she had known. It was not as hard as she expected. Cedar Springs appeared as the sun began its descent. Clara saw the church steeple, first white wood against the copper sky, a simple cross at its peak catching the last light. Then the buildings emerged, clustered along a single dusty street, like children gathered around a mother. The general store with its wide porch, the livery with horses drowsing in the corral, a boarding house with a faded sign, a saloon, its doors propped open to catch the evening breeze. People moved along the boardwalks. A woman in a blue dress carried a basket of vegetables, her bonnet shading her face. 2 men stood outside the saloon, talking in low voices, their shadows long in the slanting light. A child chased a dog down the middle of the street. Laughing. Normal. Ordinary. A town like 100 other towns scattered across Texas. Clara's throat tightened. Remember, Eli said quietly, you're my wife. You belong here as much as anyone. She nodded, straightened her spine, lifted her chin. They rolled into town. The general store was larger than Clara had expected, a two-story building with a wide porch and windows displaying bolts of fabric, canned goods, tools of every description. The smell of pickle brine and tobacco drifted through the open door. A man stood behind the counter when they entered, middle-aged, balding, with spectacles perched on the end of his nose. Afternoon, Eli said. Need some supplies. The shopkeeper looked up. His eyes moved from Eli to Clara, then back again. Something flickered in his expression. Curiosity. Assessment. You folks just passing through. Heading west, Eli said. Pecos country. Got a claim waiting. Long way to go. The shopkeeper reached for a pencil, a slip of paper. What do you need? Eli rattled off a list: flour, coffee, salt, beans, ammunition. Clara drifted toward the fabric display, running her fingers over the cotton prints. The smell of new cloth mixed with the sharper scent of dye and the dusty sweetness of the store. A calico pattern caught her eye, blue flowers on white, almost identical to the dress she had been wearing when Silas Crenshaw had bought her. She pulled her hand back. Your wife liked that pattern. Clara turned. The shopkeeper was watching her, his expression friendly. It's lovely, she managed. Just got it in last week, all the way from San Antonio. He smiled, the lines around his eyes crinkling. I could cut you a few yards, make a nice new dress for the journey ahead. Clara opened her mouth to decline. The words died in her throat, because the door had opened behind her. She heard the footsteps, first heavy boots on wooden planks, deliberate and slow. Then a voice, deep, familiar. A voice that had haunted her dreams for 3 weeks, that she would have recognized anywhere. Afternoon, shopkeeper, looking for someone, wondered if you might help. Clara did not turn around. Could not turn around. Her body had frozen, every muscle locked, every nerve screaming. Silas Crenshaw was standing 10 feet behind her. Who you looking for? The shopkeeper asked. A woman, young, dark hair, brown eyes, would have come through in the last day or two. Crenshaw's voice was smooth, pleasant. The voice of a reasonable man, making a reasonable request. She's my wife. You see, ran off a few weeks back. Took some things that didn't belong to her. Clara felt the blood drain from her face. Her hands trembled at her sides. Can't say I've seen anyone matching that description, the shopkeeper said slowly. We don't get many strangers through here. You sure about that? Footsteps. Closer now. Clara stared at the fabric display, willing herself to be invisible, to disappear into the bolts of cotton and calico. The smell of him reached her: tobacco and sweat and something sharp, like leather left too long in the sun. Eli's voice cut through the tension. Excuse me. She heard him move, felt him step between her and the door. You're blocking my wife's path to the counter. Eli said, mind stepping aside. Silence. Clara turned slowly, her heart slamming against her ribs. Eli stood with his back to her, his shoulders squared, his hands loose at his sides. Facing him was a man she would have recognized anywhere: tall, broad-shouldered, with a square jaw and cold blue eyes that held no warmth. Silas Crenshaw, her owner, her hunter. Crenshaw's eyes moved past Eli, landed on Clara. She felt the recognition hit him, saw his pupils dilate, his jaw tighten, the slight flare of his nostrils, but he said nothing. Sorry to trouble you, Crenshaw said smoothly. Didn't realize the lady was spoken for. She is... Crenshaw's lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. My apologies, ma'am. You look remarkably like someone I used to know. Clara forced her voice to work. I get that sometimes. Crenshaw held her gaze for a long moment. Something moved in his eyes, a reckoning, a weighing of options. Then he tipped his hat. Good day, folks. He turned and walked out of the store. The door swung shut behind him. His footsteps faded down the boardwalk, slow and unhurried. Clara's legs gave out. Eli caught her before she hit the floor. Easy, he murmured, his arms solid around her waist. Easy. He's gone. He saw me. Her voice came out strangled. He knows. He knows nothing. Eli's grip tightened, holding her upright. He suspects. That's different. The shopkeeper was staring at them, his face pale behind his spectacles. That man, he said slowly. Is he the one you're running from? Clara could not speak, could not think. Eli answered for her. Yes. The shopkeeper was silent for a long moment. His eyes moved to the window, to the street beyond, then back to Clara's face. Something shifted in his expression, something that looked almost like recognition. Then he reached under the counter and pulled out a shotgun. There's a back door, he said quietly. Leads to the alley behind the livery. Your wagon's out front. Eli nodded. I'll bring it around. You two wait here. The shopkeeper moved toward the door, then paused, his hand on the frame. That man's been through here twice in the last week, asking questions, showing papers. He looked at Clara, and his voice softened. Whatever those papers say, ma'am, I don't believe a word of it. My own sister was in a similar situation, years ago. I know what those auctions really are. He was gone before Clara could respond. She sagged against Eli's chest, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Why? She whispered. Why would he help us? Eli's arm tightened around her. Some people, he said quietly, still remember what's right. The back door led to a narrow alley. Clara pressed herself against the wooden wall, listening. She could hear voices from the main street, Crenshaw's smooth baritone, the shopkeeper's careful responses, something about supplies, something about the road west, buying them time. The wagon appeared at the end of the alley, Gideon's familiar form silhouetted against the fading light. Eli took Clara's hand and pulled her forward. They climbed aboard in silence. Eli took the reins, guided Gideon through the back streets, away from the main road, toward the western edge of town. Clara sat beside him, her hands clenched in her lap, her heart pounding against her ribs. They reached the edge of Cedar Springs as the last light drained from the sky. Eli pulled the wagon into a stand of mesquite, out of sight from the road, set the brake, sat there in the darkness, his breath loud in the sudden silence. He'll follow, Clara said. Probably. He won't stop. Not until. I know. Clara turned to look at him. In the darkness, she could barely make out his profile, the line of his jaw, the slope of his nose, the shadow of his hat against the stars. You should leave me, she said. Drop me here and go. He doesn't want you. He wants me. If you... No. The word was quiet. Final. Eli. I said no. He turned to face her, in the faint starlight. His eyes were steady, certain. I've spent 15 years running from everything that mattered, everything that meant something. I'm done running. Clara's throat tightened. You don't owe me anything. This isn't about owing. Eli reached out. His hand found hers in the darkness, rough and warm and real. This is about choosing, and I'm choosing to stay. Clara stared at him, at this man she had known for barely 3 days. This stranger who had stopped when no one else would, who had offered her water and a seat and a fire, who had stood between her and her hunter without hesitation. "Why?" she whispered. Eli was silent for a long moment. An owl called somewhere in the darkness. The mesquite leaves rustled in a breeze she could not feel. "Because when you asked me not to leave you," he said finally, "something came loose inside me. Something I thought was dead and buried." His fingers tightened around hers. "I don't know what it is yet. Don't know what it means. But I'm not walking away from it. Not this time." Clara could not speak. The words tangled in her throat, too big for language. Instead, she squeezed his hand. And in the darkness, miles from anywhere, hunted by a man who believed he owned her, Clara Whitmore felt something she had not felt in years: hope. They drove through the night. The moon rose, thin and pale, casting silver light across the limestone hills. Clara dozed against Eli's shoulder, jerking awake at every sound: the hoot of an owl, the rustle of brush, the distant howl of a coyote calling to its kin. Dawn found them miles from Cedar Springs, the road empty behind them, the horizon stretching pink and gold ahead. Eli pulled off near a dry creek bed. They ate breakfast in exhausted silence, the last of the biscuits, cold coffee from the canteen. Clara's eyes burned from lack of sleep, and every muscle in her body ached. But she was alive. She was free. For now. "There's something I need to tell you," Eli said. Clara looked up. His face was serious, lined with fatigue, but something else burned in his eyes, something that looked almost like hope. "I have land," he said, "about 40 miles west of here. Bought it years ago. Never built on it. Never stayed." He met her eyes. "But it's there, and it's mine." Clara frowned. "Why are you telling me this?" Eli was quiet for a long moment. A meadowlark sang somewhere nearby, its voice bright in the gray morning light. "Because I'm thinking," he said slowly, "that maybe it's time to stop running, time to build something, put down roots." He paused. "And I'm thinking that maybe if you wanted, you could be part of that." Clara stared at him. "You barely know me." "I know enough. Eli, I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "Not proposing, not claiming, just—" He ran a hand through his hair, looking suddenly uncertain. "Just offering a place, a chance, if you want it." Clara felt the words land in her chest. Heavy, real. A place, a chance. She opened her mouth to respond, and then she heard it. Hoofbeats. Coming fast, from the east. To be continued. Yeah. Clara's body moved before her mind caught up. She was on her feet, scrambling toward the wagon, her hands reaching for the sideboard. Eli grabbed her arm, pulled her back down into the brush along the dry creek bed. "Wait," he hissed. The hoofbeats grew louder, closer. Clara pressed herself flat against the cracked earth, tasting dust, feeling small stones dig into her palms. Her heart slammed against her ribs so hard she was certain the rider could hear it. Eli lay beside her, his body tense, his eyes fixed on the road above. The rider appeared. Not Crenshaw. A boy. 15, maybe 16, riding a swayback mare that looked older than he was. He passed without slowing, kicking up dust, whistling some tune Clara did not recognize. Then he was gone, disappearing around a bend in the road. Clara let out a breath she had not known she was holding. "Just a kid," Eli said quietly. "Probably heading to one of the ranches west of here." Clara nodded. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the ground, willing the tremors to stop. "I can't keep doing this." Her voice came out raw, broken. "Every sound, every rider, I can't." "You can," Eli's hand found her shoulder, steadied her. And you will, because the alternative is giving up. And you didn't survive this long just to give up now. Clara looked at him, at the certainty in his eyes, the quiet strength in his face. How do you know? She whispered. How do you know I won't just fall apart? Because you haven't yet. Eli pulled her to her feet, his grip firm but gentle. And because I've seen you, seen what you're made of. You're stronger than you think. Clara Whitmore. The words settled into her chest, warm, steady, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. She wiped the dust from her palms, straightened her spine. All right, she said. What now? They drove west. The landscape changed as the morning wore on limestone hills giving way to flatter ground. Mesquite yielding to open prairie dotted with prickly pear and yucca. The sky stretched endless above them, a blue so deep it made Clara's eyes ache. She found herself talking. She did not plan it. The words just came tumbling out like water from a cracked vessel. Unstoppable. Uncontrollable. She told Eli about the orphanage, about Sister Mary Frances, who had taught her to read and smelled of lavender soap and prayers, about the small garden behind the dormitory where she had grown tomatoes and peppers, her hands in the warm earth, the satisfaction of watching something she had planted push toward the sun. She told him about the day the orphanage closed, the shock of it one moment, a home, the next. Nothing. The scramble to find work, any work. The slow descent from respectable seamstress to boarding house resident to desperate woman with no options left. She told him about Becker, the man with the kind smile and the smooth promises, how he had loaded them into wagons, 40 women, most of them young, all of them alone, and driven them east to Miller's Crossing, how she had not understood what was happening until she saw the auction block, the platform, the men with their assessing eyes and their pockets full of money. They made us stand on a platform, she said. Her voice had gone flat, empty. One at a time, men walked around us, looked at our teeth, our hands, asked questions about our health, our skills, our temperament. Eli said nothing. His hands were tight on the reins. I thought about running, thought about fighting. But there were guards, men with guns. Clara stared at the road ahead, seeing nothing but memory. And I thought maybe it won't be so bad. Maybe the man who buys me will be decent, kind. She laughed, a small, bitter sound that held no humor. Silas Crenshaw paid $40 for me, signed the papers right there, in front of everyone, shook hands with Becker like they were closing a deal on cattle. Her hands curled into fists in her lap. Because that's what it was, a business deal. And I was the merchandise. The wagon creaked. Gideon's hooves beat their steady rhythm. The prairie grass swayed in the wind, golden and indifferent. He took me to his ranch that same day. Clara continued. Big place, fine house, servants, cattle, horses, everything a man could want. She paused. Except a wife who stayed. What do you mean? His first wife died 2 years ago. That's what he told me. Said she took sick, passed in her sleep. Tragic, but the Lord's will. Clara's voice hardened. But I saw her grave, behind the barn. No marker, no flowers, just a mound of dirt someone had tried to hide with brush. Eli's jaw tightened. And the child's grave. His son, 3 years old, died the same year as his wife. Clara swallowed against the tightness in her throat. The servants wouldn't talk about it, wouldn't look me in the eye. But I heard things, whispers, about bruises no one was supposed to see, about screams in the night. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of sage and sun-warmed earth. A hawk circled overhead, patient and free. I knew then, Clara said quietly. Knew what kind of man he was, what kind of life I would have if I stayed. She met Eli's eyes. So I ran. How? The third night. He was drunk. He drank most nights. I learned. Passed out in his study with a bottle in his hand. I packed what I could carry, took his mule from the stable, and rode until dawn. Clara shook her head. I don't even know how I found the road. Didn't matter. Just needed to get away. And the mule, sold it in a town called Willow Creek. $12. Bought a stage ticket west. She laughed again, hollow and tired. That stage that was supposed to take me to safety, it never came. So you ended up at that depot. 2 days of waiting, 2 days of praying. Clara's voice dropped. 2 days of watching the horizon and believing, truly believing that help would come. She turned to look at him. And then you did. Eli was quiet for a long moment. The wagon rolled on, the prairie stretching endless around them, the sun climbing higher in the cloudless sky. I'm glad I stopped, he said finally. Why? He did not answer immediately. The wagon wheels creaked. A meadowlark sang its bright song from somewhere in the tall grass. When I came back from the war, he said slowly, I thought I knew what pain was, thought I understood loss, but nothing prepared me for coming home to nothing, finding out that everything I'd fought for, everything I'd dreamed about it was all gone. Clara watched his profile, the way the muscles worked in his jaw, the tension in his shoulders. Sarah marrying someone else that hurt, but it wasn't the worst part. Eli's voice was low, rough. The worst part was realizing that I had disappeared, that 4 years of my life meant nothing, that the world had moved on without me, and there was no place for me in it anymore. So you left. So I left, bought a horse, started riding, and didn't stop. He shrugged, but his shoulders stayed tight. Found work where I could, cattle drives, ranch hands, odd jobs that paid enough to eat. Nothing that lasted, nothing that mattered. For 15 years. Eli's hands shifted on the reins. I told myself it was freedom, told myself I preferred it this way. No ties, no obligations, no one to disappoint. He paused. But the truth is, I was just too scared to try again. Clara understood. Understood more than she wanted to. What changed? She asked. Eli turned to look at her. His eyes were steady, clear. You. The word hung between them, heavy as summer heat. When I saw you sitting there, he said, something happened. Something I can't rightly explain. It was like looking in a mirror, seeing my own loneliness reflected back at me. He shook his head. And I thought if I ride past her, if I leave her there, I'm going to spend the rest of my life wondering what might have happened, wondering if I could have helped, wondering if I missed my one chance to be something more than just a man running from his own shadow. Clara's throat tightened. So, you stopped. So I stopped. Eli's mouth curved into something that was not quite a smile. And here we are. Here we are. Clara looked at him, really looked at him, at the lines etched by sun and wind and sorrow, at the gray threading through his beard like silver in a creek bed, at the eyes that had seen too much and still, somehow, remained kind. The land you mentioned, she said slowly. The land you bought. Where is it? Another 30 miles west. Maybe less. Eli pointed toward the horizon, where the land rose gently into distant hills. Hill country, good water, Trees for shade, meadow for grazing. I rode out there once, years ago. Meant to build, meant to stay. His voice dropped. Never could find a reason to. And now, Eli was quiet. The wagon creaked. The prairie wind whispered through the grass, carrying the clean smell of open spaces and distant rain. Now, he said finally, I think maybe I've found one. Clara felt the words land in her chest, heavy, real, like seeds dropped into soil that had been waiting for rain. She opened her mouth to respond. Pull over. The voice came from behind them. Clara's blood froze. She turned slowly, her heart stopping mid-beat. A rider had appeared from the brush along the road, not Crenshaw, but a man she recognized from the auction. One of Becker's guards. The one with the scar across his jaw and the cold, empty eyes that looked at women like they were cattle. He held a rifle, pointed at Eli's chest. The lady's coming with me, he said. And you're going to let her, unless you want to die out here in the middle of nowhere, with nobody to bury you and nobody to remember your name. Clara stared at the rifle barrel, at the man holding it, at the road stretching empty in both directions. She looked at Eli, saw his hands tighten on the reins, saw him glance down at the space beneath the wagon seat, where his own rifle was hidden. To be continued. The rifle barrel caught the morning light. Clara stared at it, the dark metal, the worn wooden stock, the steady hands holding it aimed at Eli's heart. The man with the scarred jaw sat motionless on his horse, his eyes flat and patient, the eyes of a man who had done this before and would do it again without losing a moment's sleep. Step down from the wagon, he said. Both of you. Slow. Eli did not move. His hands remained on the reins, loose, casual. But Clara could see the tension in his shoulders, the slight shift of his weight toward the space beneath the seat. I said step down. Heard you the first time. Eli's voice was calm. Too calm. Just thinking. Think faster. Clara's mouth had gone dry. Her tongue felt thick, useless. She wanted to speak, to do something, but her body refused to cooperate. Fear had locked her joints, frozen her muscles, turned her into a statue of flesh and bone. The scarred man's horse stamped, impatient. Dust rose around its hooves like smoke. You're the one from the depot, Clara heard herself say. Her voice came out thin, cracked. You worked for Becker. Worked! The man's lips curled, revealing teeth stained brown with tobacco. Mr. Crenshaw pays better, and he's real eager to get his property back. Property. The word hit Clara like a fist to the stomach. She felt something twist inside her, not fear this time. Something hotter, darker. I'm not his property. Papers say different. The scarred man shrugged. Don't matter to me either way. I get paid whether you come willing or not. Eli moved. It happened faster than Clara could track. One moment he was sitting still. The next his hand was diving beneath the seat, reaching for the rifle hidden there. The scarred man's finger tightened on his trigger. Don't. The words stopped Eli cold. I'll put a hole in you before you clear that stock, the scarred man said. And then I'll take her anyway. Your choice. Eli's hand hovered. Clara could see the reckoning in his eyes' distance. Angle. Odds. None of them good. Slowly, he raised his hands. Smart man. The scarred man gestured with his rifle barrel. Now, both of you. Down. And if I see either of you reach for anything, I start shooting. Clara climbed down from the wagon. Her legs trembled as her boots hit the dirt. The ground felt unsteady beneath her, tilting and swaying like the deck of a ship in rough water. She grabbed the wagon wheel to steady herself, felt the rough wood bite into her palm. Eli descended on the other side. His movements were deliberate, careful. His eyes never left the scarred man. Walk toward me, the scarred man said. The woman first. Clara looked at Eli, He met her gaze, and something passed between them, a message, a promise, something she could not quite read. Then he nodded, once, almost imperceptibly. She started walking. The prairie grass whispered against her skirt. The sun beat down on her shoulders, hot and merciless. 20 feet. 15. 10. The scarred man's horse loomed larger with every step, its breath loud in the stillness, the smell of animal sweat thick in her nostrils. Stop there. Clara stopped. 5 feet from the horse. Close enough to smell the man now, too. Tobacco and whiskey and something sour, like meat gone bad. Mr. Crenshaw's been looking for you for 3 weeks, the scarred man said. Spent a lot of money. A lot of time. He's not happy. He leaned forward in the saddle, his eyes crawling over her like insects. You're going to wish you'd never run. Clara's hands curled into fists at her sides. I'd rather die. The scarred man laughed, a short, ugly sound. That can be arranged, but not until Mr. Crenshaw's had his say. He reached down, grabbed a coil of rope from his saddle horn. Hold out your hands. Clara did not move. I said, hold out your hands. Her arms stayed at her sides. Something was building inside her, not courage, not quite. Something more like fury, the kind that burns so hot it goes cold. No. The scarred man's eyes narrowed. What did you say? I said no. Clara's voice was steady now, quiet. You want to tie me up. You're going to have to get down from that horse and do it yourself, and I promise you, I will fight. I will scream. I will bite and scratch and claw until you beat me unconscious. She lifted her chin. Is that what Mr. Crenshaw wants his property delivered bloody and broken? The scarred man stared at her. Something flickered in those flat eyes, surprise. Maybe, or a second thought. You've got spine, he said slowly. I'll give you that. Get down from the horse. Clara blinked. The voice came from behind her. Eli's voice. But different. Harder. Edged with something dangerous. She turned. Eli stood 10 feet away, his rifle leveled at the scarred man's chest. He must have circled around while she was talking, using the wagon as cover. His hands were steady. His eyes were ice. Drop the rifle, Eli said. Slow. And if your finger so much as twitches toward that trigger, I'll put a bullet through your lung. The scarred man's jaw tightened. You're making a mistake, friend. Maybe, but it's mine to make. Eli took a step closer. Drop it. Now. For a long moment, no one moved. The prairie wind gusted, carrying dust and the smell of sage. A hawk circled overhead, riding the thermals, patient and indifferent. Then the scarred man smiled. All right. He threw himself sideways off the horse. The rifle discharged as he felt a thunderclap that split the morning air. Clara felt the bullet pass, hot wind against her cheek. She screamed, or tried to. No sound came out. The scarred man hit the ground rolling, came up with a pistol in his hand. Eli fired. The shot went wide, kicking up dust 3 feet to the left. The scarred man fired back. Eli dove behind the wagon wheel. Clara stood frozen in the open. Run, Eli shouted. Clara, run! Her legs would not work. Her body refused to move. She watched the scarred man swing his pistol toward her, saw his finger tighten on the trigger, saw the black eye of the barrel staring at her like the entrance to a grave. Then something hit her from the side. Eli, tackling her to the ground. They went down hard, rolling through the dust and grass, his body covering hers as another shot cracked overhead. Stay down, he hissed in her ear. He was up again before she could respond, moving low and fast toward the wagon. The scarred man had taken cover behind his horse, using the animal as a shield. Clara could hear him reloading, the click of the cylinder, the rattle of fresh cartridges. "You're going to die out here," the scarred man called. "Both of you. And then I'm going to drag her body back to Crenshaw and collect my money anyway." Eli did not answer. He reached into the wagon bed, pulled out something Clara could not see. The scarred man peered around his horse's flank, raised his pistol. Eli threw. The object arced through the air, a bag of flour. Clara realized. Watching it spin, it hit the ground at the horse's hooves and exploded into a white cloud. The horse screamed, reared, hooves flailing at the air. The scarred man stumbled backward, blinded by the flour, coughing and cursing. Eli charged. They collided in the white haze, two shapes grappling, struggling, falling. Clara heard the pistol fire again, muffled by the dust cloud, heard a grunt of pain, heard the heavy thud of bodies hitting earth. Then silence. Clara pushed herself up on trembling arms. Flour dust drifted across the prairie, settling slowly, revealing the scene beneath like a curtain being drawn. Two figures on the ground, neither moving. Eli. No answer. Clara crawled forward. Her hands sank into the disturbed earth, flour coating her palms, mixing with sweat and dirt until her skin was caked with gray paste. Her dress dragged through the dust. Her knees scraped over rocks and roots. She did not care, could not care. Eli. She reached the bodies. The scarred man lay face down, his arm twisted at an unnatural angle, his pistol 3 feet away in the grass. His chest rose and fell unconscious. Not dead. Eli lay beside him, on his back. Eyes closed. Blood soaked through his shirt. Clara's heart stopped. She scrambled to his side, her hands finding the wound without conscious thought. Left side. Below the ribs. The bullet had entered cleanly, leaving a hole the size of her thumb. Blood welled between her fingers, warm and thick and terrifying. "Eli, Eli, can you hear me?" His eyelids fluttered. His lips moved, barely forming words. "Clara." "Don't talk. Don't." Her voice broke. "I need to stop the bleeding. I need..." She looked around wildly. The wagon, supplies, bandages, something, anything. "My saddlebag," Eli whispered. "Whiskey, clean cloth, needle, and thread." Clara ran. She tore through the wagon bed, throwing aside fence posts and rope coils until she found the saddlebag. Inside a bottle of amber liquid, a bundle of clean rags, a small leather case containing a needle, thread, and a pair of scissors. She ran back. Eli had managed to push himself up on one elbow. His face was pale, sheened with sweat. Blood had soaked through his shirt and was pooling in the dirt beneath him. "Pour the whiskey on it," he said. His voice was thin, strained. "Then pack the wound with cloth. Tight." Clara's hands shook as she uncorked the bottle. The smell of alcohol burned her nostrils, sharp and medicinal. "This is going to hurt. I know." She poured. Eli's body arched off the ground. A sound tore from his throat, not quite a scream. Something raw, something more animal. His hands clawed at the dirt, fingers digging furrows in the earth. Clara watched the whiskey run red as it washed through the wound, carrying debris and blood and fragments she did not want to identify. "Keep going," Eli gasped. "All of it." She emptied the bottle. Then she packed the wound with cloth, pressing hard, feeling his blood soak through the fabric and onto her hands. Eli's breathing came in short, sharp gasps. His eyes were squeezed shut, every muscle in his body rigid with pain. "I need to stitch it," Clara said. "I don't know how. I've never..." "You'll learn." Eli's hand found hers, squeezed. Thread the needle, small stitches, close together. Clara threaded the needle, Her hands trembled so badly she had to try 3 times before the thread slipped through the eye. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. This is my fault. If I hadn't—" "Stop." Eli's voice cut through her guilt. "This is not your fault. None of this is your fault." His eyes opened, met hers. "Now stitch." Clara stitched. The needle pierced flesh. Blood welled. Eli's jaw clenched, the cords in his neck standing out like ropes. She pulled the thread through, made another stitch, then another. Small, close together, just like he said. By the time she finished, her hands were covered in blood. Her dress was ruined. Her face was streaked with tears she did not remember crying. Flour dust and dirt caked her skin, her hair, her clothes. She looked like something dragged from a grave. But the wound was closed. Eli lay still, his chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. His skin had gone gray, waxy. His lips were pale. "We need to move," Clara said. "Get you somewhere safe. A doctor." "No doctor." Eli's voice was barely audible. "Crenshaw will have men watching every town within 50 miles. We show up asking for help. We're dead." "Then where?" Eli's eyes drifted toward the western horizon, where the hills rose blue and distant against the sky. "My land," he whispered. 30 miles, maybe less. There's a spring. Shelter." His hand found hers again, his grip weak but determined. "Can you drive the wagon?" Clara looked at the wagon, at Gideon, standing patiently where Eli had left him, seemingly unbothered by the violence that had erupted around him. At the road stretching west, empty and endless under the burning sun. "Yes," she said, "I can drive the wagon." "Then go." Eli's grip tightened on her hand. "Leave the man. He'll wake up eventually. By the time he does, we'll be gone." Clara nodded, rose on unsteady legs, walked to the scarred man's unconscious form and kicked his pistol into the tall grass, far from where he could find it. Then she retrieved Eli's rifle from where it had fallen, checked it the way she had seen him do, and carried it back to the wagon. It took all her strength to get Eli into the wagon bed. He could not walk, could barely move. She half carried, half dragged him across the churned earth, flour dust coating them both until they looked like ghosts risen from some forgotten grave. His blood left a dark trail in the dirt behind them. She settled him among the supplies, covered him with blankets, pressed a fresh cloth against the wound. "Keep pressure on it," she said. "Don't move. Don't." "Clara." She stopped, looked at him. His eyes were clearer now, focused. "You did good," he said. "You saved my life." Clara's throat tightened. She wanted to say something, wanted to tell him that he had saved hers first, that none of this would have happened if he had just kept riding 3 days ago, that she would give anything to undo the choices that had brought them here. But there was no time for words. She climbed onto the wagon seat, gathered the reins in her blood-stained hands, clicked her tongue at Gideon. The wagon lurched forward, behind them. The scarred man lay motionless in the settling dust. Ahead, the prairie stretched toward the horizon, golden and infinite and unknowable. Clara drove. The sun climbed. The hours blurred. Clara lost track of time, lost track of miles. There was only the road, the steady rhythm of Gideon's hooves, the weight of the rifle across her lap. She stopped twice to check on Eli, to change the dressing, to give him water, to make sure he was still breathing. He drifted in and out of consciousness. Sometimes he spoke fragments of sentences that made no sense, names she did not recognize, memories surfacing from whatever dark place the pain had sent him. "Sarah," he murmured once, his voice thick with fever. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Clara held his hand and said nothing. The landscape changed as afternoon wore toward evening. The flat prairie gave way to rolling hills, dotted with live oak and cedar. The air smelled different, cleaner, greener, carrying the faint sweetness of wildflowers and the cool promise of water. In the distance, Clara could see the dark line of trees that marked a creek or spring. "We're close," she told Eli. "We're almost there." He did not respond. She drove on. The sun was touching the western hills when she saw it, a meadow. Spread out below them like a promise kept, a creek ran through its center, sparkling in the golden light. Trees lined its banks, offering shade and shelter. And beyond, rising gently toward the horizon, a hill with a view that seemed to stretch forever. Eli's land. Clara pulled the wagon to a stop at the edge of the meadow, sat there for a long moment, staring at the beauty spread before her. Then she heard Eli's voice, weak but clear. "We made it." Clara turned. He was propped up on one elbow, looking past her at the land he had bought years ago and never claimed. "We made it," she echoed. But as she turned back toward the meadow, something caught her eye, a shape moving among the trees along the creek. Too big to be a deer, too purposeful, a horse, and on it, a rider, watching them. To be continued. Clara's hand found the rifle. Her fingers curled around the stock, slick with dried blood. She raised it slowly, settling the barrel against her shoulder the way she had seen Eli do. The weight felt wrong, too heavy, too unfamiliar. But she held it steady. The rider emerged from the tree line. Not Crenshaw. A woman. Clara blinked, certain the exhaustion and fear had finally broken something in her mind. But the figure remained a woman on horseback, maybe 50 years old, with gray-streaked hair pulled back from a weathered face. She wore men's trousers, a faded cotton shirt, and a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed her eyes. She stopped her horse 20 feet from the wagon, raised her hands, palms out. "Don't shoot," she called. "I mean you no harm." Clara did not lower the rifle. "Who are you?" "Name's Martha Hensley. I own the spread north of here." The woman nodded toward the hills behind her. "Saw your wagon coming across the flats. Thought maybe someone was finally claiming this plot. This land belongs to Eli Callahan." Martha's eyes moved past Clara, toward the wagon bed. Something shifted in her expression. Concern, maybe, or recognition. "That man back there," she said. "Is he Callahan?" "Yes. He's hurt." Clara's grip tightened on the rifle. "I can handle it." "Can you?" Martha's voice was calm, not challenging, just honest. "Because from where I'm sitting, you look like you've been through something most folks don't survive, and that man looks like he needs more help than one person can give." Clara's arms trembled. The rifle wavered. She thought about the last 5 days, the depot, the fire, the riders in the night, the town, the scarred man, the blood on her hands. Eli's blood, still crusted under her fingernails and caked in the lines of her palms. She thought about what it had cost to get here, and she thought about what it would cost if she turned this woman away. "He was shot," Clara heard herself say. "This morning, I stitched the wound, but he's lost a lot of blood. He keeps drifting. I don't know if—" Her voice broke. Martha was off her horse before Clara finished speaking. She moved with the quick, efficient grace of someone who had dealt with emergencies before, who knew that hesitation cost lives. "Let me see him." Clara lowered the rifle. Martha Hensley knew what she was doing. Clara watched her work checking Eli's pulse with steady fingers, examining the wound, pressing her hand against his forehead to gauge fever. Her movements were practiced, unhurried, the movements of someone who had tended sick animals and injured men and probably delivered a few babies along the way. "Bullets out," Martha said. That's good. Stitching's rough, but it'll hold. Main thing now is keeping infection away and getting fluids in him. She looked at Clara. You did this. He talked me through it. Martha's eyebrows rose. First time? Yes. You did well. Martha straightened, wiped her hands on her trousers. He needs rest, clean water, proper food when he can keep it down, and someone watching that wound for signs of fever or rot. I can do that. I'm sure you can. Martha studied her for a long moment, her eyes taking in the blood-stained dress, the flour-caked hair, the dark circles beneath Clara's eyes. But you also look like you're about to fall over. When's the last time you slept? Really slept? Clara could not remember. The days had blurred together into one long nightmare of fear and exhaustion. That's what I thought. Martha turned toward her horse. I've got a cabin about 2 miles north. Nothing fancy, but it's got beds and a stove and a well with clean water. You're welcome to use it while he heals. Clara shook her head. We can't. There are men looking for us. If they track us to your place, then we'll deal with them. Martha's voice was matter-of-fact, like she was discussing the weather or the price of flour. I've been running that spread alone for 12 years, since my husband passed. I've faced down rustlers, wolves, and one very determined mountain lion. I reckon I can handle a few men with bad intentions. Clara stared at her. This stranger. This woman who had no reason to help them, no stake in their survival, nothing to gain from getting involved. Why? She asked. Why would you do this? Martha was quiet for a moment. Her eyes moved across the meadow, the creek, the hills beyond. When I first came out here, she said slowly, I was alone, scared, had nothing but a wagon full of hope and a husband who didn't know the first thing about ranching. She smiled, a small, sad curve of her lips. We would have died that first winter if it wasn't for a neighbor who showed up with food and blankets and the knowledge we needed to survive. She turned back to Clara. I never got a chance to repay that kindness. The man who helped us moved on before I could thank him properly. But I made a promise to myself that day. If I ever saw someone in need, real need, the kind that could kill you, I'd do for them what he did for us. Clara felt something loosen in her chest, something that had been wound tight for so long she had forgotten it was there. Thank you, she whispered. Martha waved a hand. Thank me when he's on his feet again. Right now, let's get this wagon moving before the sun goes down. Martha's cabin was small but solid. Stone foundation, log walls chinked with mud and lime, a roof of cedar shakes that had weathered gray with age. Inside a single room with a cast iron stove, a wooden table, 2 chairs worn smooth by years of use, and a bed built into the corner beneath a window that looked out toward the hills. The smell of wood smoke and dried herbs filled the air. A kettle sat on the stove, still warm. A rag rug covered the floor near the bed. Its colors faded but cheerful red and blue and yellow, woven by hands that had loved this place. Clara helped Martha carry Eli inside. He was conscious now, barely his eyes tracking their movements as they settled him onto the bed. His skin was pale, clammy with sweat, but his breathing was steady. Water, Martha said, pressing a tin cup to his lips. Small sips. That's it. Eli drank. His eyes found Clara's. Where? His voice was a rasp. Safe, Clara said. We're safe. His eyes drifted closed. Martha touched Clara's arm. He needs rest. So do you. She nodded toward a pile of quilts in the corner. Their patterns faded, but the fabric still soft. I'll keep watch for a few hours. You sleep. Clara wanted to argue, wanted to stay awake, stay vigilant, stay ready for whatever came next. But her body had other ideas. The moment she sat down on those quilts, the exhaustion crashed over her like a wave, dragging her down into darkness. She slept. Morning light woke her. Clara sat up, disoriented, her heart pounding. Where was she? What memory returned in fragments? The meadow, Martha, the cabin, Eli. She scrambled to her feet, crossed to the bed. He was still there, still breathing, his color slightly better than the night before. Someone Martha had changed his bandages. Clean white cloth wrapped his torso, spotted with only a small amount of blood. He woke twice in the night. Martha's voice came from behind her. Took some water, a little broth. Fever's down. Clara turned. Martha stood by the stove, stirring something in a pot. The smell of cooking beans and salt pork filled the small cabin, mingling with the scent of fresh coffee. He's going to be all right. Barring infection. Yes, he's strong, stubborn. Martha smiled slightly. Good combination for surviving. Clara sank into one of the wooden chairs. Her hands were shaking. Relief. She realized. Pure, overwhelming relief. I don't know how to thank you, she said. No need. Martha ladled beans onto a plate, set it in front of Clara. The steam rose in lazy spirals, carrying the smell of home. Eat. You're no good to him if you collapse. Clara ate. The beans were simple salt and fat and the familiar sweetness of molasses. They tasted like the suppers of her childhood, like safety, like everything she had lost and almost forgotten. She had not realized how hungry she was until the food hit her tongue. The men following you, Martha said, sitting across from her. What's the story? Clara hesitated. The truth was ugly, shameful. The kind of thing decent people did not talk about over breakfast. But Martha had earned honesty. So Clara told her. Everything. The orphanage. The auction. Silas Crenshaw. The escape. The depot. Eli stopping when no one else would. The ride through the night. The shootout with the scarred man. The desperate flight to reach this place. Martha listened without interrupting. Her face remained still, unreadable. When Clara finished, the silence stretched between them. That man, Martha said finally. Crenshaw. He'll keep looking. I know. He's got money, resources, men willing to do his dirty work. I know. Martha leaned back in her chair. And you still came here, to a piece of land in the middle of nowhere, with a wounded man and no real plan. Clara's hands curled around her cup, the warmth seeping into her cold fingers. I didn't have anywhere else to go. That's not what I mean. Martha's eyes were sharp, measuring. You could have left him. After the shooting. Could have taken the wagon. Driven somewhere else. Started over on your own. Nobody would have blamed you. Clara thought about it. Thought about the moment she had knelt beside Eli's bleeding body. The choice that had crystallized in that instant. He stopped for me, she said quietly. When no one else would. When he had every reason to keep going. He stopped. She met Martha's eyes. I couldn't leave him. Couldn't be the kind of person who walks away when someone needs help. Martha was silent for a long moment. You love him. The words hit Clara like a physical blow. She opened her mouth to deny it. They had known each other barely 5 days. That was not enough time to love someone. Was not enough time to feel anything beyond gratitude and obligation. But the denial died in her throat, because Martha was right. Somewhere in the last 5 days between the depot and the fire, the conversations on the wagon seat, the moments of fear and tenderness and terrible vulnerability, something had taken root in Clara's chest. Something that had nothing to do with gratitude. Something that felt terrifyingly like love. I don't know what I feel, she said honestly. Everything's happened so fast. I can barely think straight. That's how it works sometimes. Martha's voice was gentle. Love doesn't wait for convenient timing. It just happens. And then you have to figure out what to do with it. Clara stared into her cup. The surface of the liquid trembled with her heartbeat. What if he doesn't feel the same? Then you'll survive. You've survived worse. Martha rose, crossed to the stove, stirred the beans. But for what it's worth, I've seen how he looks at you, even half-conscious, even barely alive. His eyes find you first, every time. Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. Get some more rest, Martha said. I need to check on my cattle. I'll be back before dark. She was gone before Clara could respond. The day passed slowly. Clara sat by Eli's bed, watching him sleep, watching the rise and fall of his chest beneath the bandages. Sometimes his eyes would flutter open, focus on her face, and a small smile would curve his lips before he drifted off again. She talked to him, told him about the cabin, about Martha, about the view from the window, the hills rolling gold and green in the afternoon light, the creek glittering silver in the distance. She was not sure he could hear her, but the sound of her own voice filled the silence, pushed back the fear that still lurked at the edges of her mind. In the late afternoon, his eyes opened and stayed open. Clara! She leaned forward, took his hand. His grip was weak but warm. I'm here. Where? Martha Hensley's cabin, north of your land. She found us, brought us here. Clara squeezed his fingers. You're going to be all right. And Eli's brow furrowed. He tried to sit up, winced, fell back against the pillow. Don't, Clara said quickly. You need to rest. The wound, the scarred man. I left him. He was unconscious. By the time he woke up, we were gone. Eli's jaw tightened. He'll tell Crenshaw. They'll track us. I know. Clara's voice was steady. She had spent all day preparing for this conversation, turning the words over in her mind until they felt smooth and solid. But we're safe for now. Martha's watching the trails. And when you're strong enough, we'll figure out what to do next. Eli studied her face. Something moved in his eyes, surprise, maybe, or admiration. You drove the wagon, he said. All the way here. Yes. Stitched my wound, kept me alive. You talked me through it. Clara, his hand tightened around hers. You saved my life. She felt tears prick her eyes, blinked them back. You saved mine first. They stayed like that for a long moment, hands clasped, the afternoon light slanting through the window and painting golden stripes across the bed. The land, Eli said finally. Did you see it? The meadow, the creek. I saw it. Clara smiled. It's beautiful. I bought it 12 years ago, right after. He trailed off, shook his head. Doesn't matter. I told myself I'd build something there. A cabin, a life. But I never could. Every time I came close, something stopped me. Fear, I reckon. Fear that I'd fail, that I'd try to put down roots and they'd just wither. Clara understood more than she wanted to. And now, Eli's eyes found hers. Now, he said slowly, I think maybe I was waiting. For the right reason. The right person. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. I meant what I said. Clara, before the shooting, about building something, about wanting you to be part of it. Clara's heart hammered in her chest. Eli, I'm not asking for an answer, not now. Not while I'm lying here useless and you're exhausted and scared and probably wondering what kind of fool you've tied yourself to. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Just think about it. That's all I'm asking." Clara looked at him, at this man who had stopped for her, fought for her, nearly died for her. This stranger who had become something so much more in the space of 5 impossible days. "I don't need to think about it," she said. His expression shifted. Uncertain. Hopeful. "Clara." She leaned down, pressed her forehead against his. "Yes," she whispered. "Whatever you're offering, whatever we're building. Yes." Eli's breath caught. His free hand rose, trembling, to cup her cheek. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." He pulled her closer. Their lips met gentle, tentative. A first kiss that tasted of salt and dust and something that felt terrifyingly like hope. When they finally broke apart, Eli was smiling, a real smile, the first she had ever seen on his face. "Well then," he said, "I reckon we'd better start making plans." Martha returned at dusk. Clara heard her horse before she saw it, the steady clop of hooves, the creak of leather. She rose from the chair by Eli's bed, crossed to the window, looked out. Martha was riding fast, too fast. Clara's stomach clenched. The cabin door burst open. Martha stood in the threshold, her face pale, her breath coming hard. "Riders," she said. "Coming from the east. 4 of them. Maybe 5. Clara's blood turned to ice. "How far?" "An hour. Maybe less." Martha's eyes moved to Eli, lying helpless on the bed. "They're following your trail. They know you're here." Clara turned to Eli. He was already struggling to sit up, his jaw clenched against the pain. "Give me the rifle," he said. "You can barely move. I can shoot." His eyes were hard, determined. "Give me the rifle." Martha stepped forward. "There's a root cellar, under the floor. My husband built it for storing vegetables, but it's big enough to hide in. I can tell them you moved on, that I haven't seen." "They won't believe you." Clara's voice came out flat, certain. "Crenshaw's not stupid. He'll search the cabin. He'll find us." Silence fell over the room. Clara looked at the window, at the fading light, at the hills stretching toward the horizon, painted gold and red by the setting sun. An hour, maybe less. She turned back to Martha, to Eli, to the 2 people who had risked everything to help her, and she made a decision. "I'll go to them," she said. "What?" Eli's voice cracked. "Clara, no. If I go to them, if I give myself up, they'll leave you alone. Crenshaw doesn't want you. He wants me." Clara's hands curled into fists at her sides. "I won't let anyone else get hurt because of me." "Clara, it's my choice." She met his eyes. "You gave me that, the freedom to choose. And I'm choosing to protect the people I love." The word hung in the air between them. Love. Eli stared at her. Something broke behind his eyes, something raw and desperate and utterly defenseless. "Please," he whispered. "Don't do this." Clara crossed to the bed, took his face in her hands, kissed him hard, desperate, a goodbye neither of them wanted. "I have to," she said against his lips. "I'm sorry." She pulled away before he could respond, grabbed her shawl from the chair, walked toward the door. Martha blocked her path. "Wait." Clara stopped. Martha was staring past her, toward the window, toward the eastern horizon, where dust was beginning to rise against the darkening sky. "There's another way," Martha said slowly, "but it's dangerous, and it requires you to trust me completely." Clara's heart pounded. "What way?" Martha met her eyes. Do you know how to start a fire? To be continued. The prairie grass burned fast. Clara watched the flames spread from the spot where she had dropped the torch, hungry orange tongues racing through the dry summer growth, leaping and crackling as they devoured everything in their path. Smoke billowed upward, thick and black against the copper sky, catching the wind and streaming east, toward the riders. That'll slow them down, Martha said, mounting her horse. Fire's moving away from the cabin, but they'll have to go around. Buys us maybe 2 hours. 2 hours. Not much, but enough. Clara ran back to the cabin. Eli was sitting up now, his feet on the floor, his face gray with the effort. He had the rifle across his lap, his knuckles white around the stock. "Help me up," he said. "You can't." "I can." His eyes met hers. Steady. Certain. "If we're running, I'm running with you. Not lying here waiting to be found." Clara looked at Martha, who shrugged. "He's stubborn. I told you." Together, they got Eli to his feet. He swayed, caught himself on Clara's shoulder, drew a sharp breath through his teeth, but he stayed upright. "The wagon's too slow," Martha said. "I've got 2 horses in the barn. They're not fast, but they'll carry you. Head north through the canyon, then west along the ridge. There's a settlement called Thornton about 40 miles out. Good people. They'll take you in." Clara shook her head. "We can't take your horses. How will you?" "I've got others at the main spread. I'll be fine." Martha's voice was firm. "Now go. Before that fire burns out and those men find their way through." They moved. Clara had never saddled a horse before, but Martha's hands guided hers, cinch strap here, bridle there, stirrup adjusted for length. The horses were calm, patient animals, seemingly unbothered by the smoke drifting through the evening air. Getting Eli onto his horse was harder. He could not pull himself up, could not use his left arm without the wound screaming in protest. In the end, Clara and Martha half lifted, half pushed him into the saddle. He gripped the horn with white knuckles, breathing hard. "You good?" Clara asked. "I'll make it." She mounted her own horse. The animal shifted beneath her, sensing her inexperience, but held steady. Martha handed up a saddlebag food, water, clean bandages. "Change that dressing every few hours. Keep the wound dry. And if he starts burning up with fever, you find a doctor. I don't care how dangerous it is." "I will." Martha stepped back. The firelight painted her face in shades of orange and shadow. "Thank you," Clara said, "for everything. Just survive." Martha's voice was rough. "That's thanks enough." Clara turned her horse north. Eli did the same, moving slower, his body hunched against the pane. Behind them, the fire crackled and roared, painting the twilight sky in shades of amber and crimson. Ahead, the canyon mouth opened like a dark passage. Swallowing the last light of day, they rode. The canyon was narrow and deep. Limestone walls rose on either side, pale in the moonlight, carved by centuries of water that had long since found another path. The horses picked their way through the rocky bottom, hooves clattering against loose stone, the sound echoing off the walls like distant applause. Clara kept her eyes on Eli. He rode slightly ahead of her, his silhouette swaying with each step of his horse. Every few minutes, she would call his name softly, and he would respond, sometimes with words, sometimes with just a grunt, still conscious, still moving. That was all that mattered. The hours blurred together. The moon rose higher, casting silver light into the canyon, painting the rocks in shades of gray and white. Owls called from somewhere above, their voices hollow and mournful. Small animals rustled in the brush along the canyon floor. The normal sounds of a Texas night, indifferent to the 2 humans passing through. Near midnight, they emerged onto a ridge. Clara pulled her horse to a stop. Before them, The land fell away in rolling waves of shadow hills and valleys stretching toward a horizon she could not see. Behind them, far to the south, a faint orange glow marked where the fire still burned. "We need to rest," she said. Eli did not argue. That worried her more than anything. She found a sheltered spot among the rocks, a small hollow protected from the wind, hidden from the trail below. Getting Eli down from his horse took everything she had. He leaned against her, his weight almost too much to bear, his breath coming in short gasps. She settled him against the rock wall, spread a blanket over his legs. His skin was hot when she touched his forehead. Fever. Not bad yet, but building. "Martha said to change the dressing," she said, reaching for the saddlebag. "Clara." She paused, looked at him. His eyes were clear despite the fever. Focused. "If I don't make it, don't. Listen to me." His hand found hers, squeezed with surprising strength. "If I don't make it, you keep going. You get to Thornton. You start over. You build a life. Stop talking like that. The land, my land, the papers are in the saddlebag. Everything's in order. If something happens to me, it's yours. All of it." Clara's vision blurred. She blinked, felt tears spill down her cheeks, hot and unwelcome. "You're not dying," she said. "I didn't drag you this far to watch you die." Eli's lips curved, a ghost of a smile. "Didn't say I was planning to." His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. "Just wanted you to know. In case." Clara leaned down, pressed her forehead against his. "No more in case," she whispered. "No more what if. We're going to make it. Both of us. And when you're healed, we're going back to that meadow. We're going to build that cabin. We're going to plant a garden and raise horses and grow old together, watching the sun set over those hills." That's a lot of promises. I'm good for them. Eli's hand rose, trembling, to touch her face. "I believe you," he said. She changed his dressing by moonlight. The wound looked angry red and swollen around the stitches, weeping clear fluid that glistened in the pale light. Not infected. Not yet. But close enough that Clara's hands shook as she packed it with fresh cloth, wrapped it tight. Eli bore it in silence. His jaw clenched, the cords in his neck standing out like ropes. But he did not cry out, did not complain. When she finished, she gave him water from the canteen, made him eat a few bites of the dried beef Martha had packed. Then she sat beside him, her back against the rock, her shoulder pressed against his. "Tell me about the cabin," he said. Clara frowned. "What? The cabin we're going to build. Tell me about it." She understood then. He needed distraction. Something to focus on besides the pain, the fever, the darkness pressing in from all sides. "It'll face east," she said slowly, "so we can watch the sunrise from the porch. 2 rooms, 1 for sleeping, 1 for living. A big stone fireplace in the main room, for cooking and keeping warm in winter. Windows. Yes, real glass ones, not just oiled paper. I want to see the meadow when I'm inside. Want to watch the seasons change." Eli's head settled against her shoulder, heavy and warm. "What about the garden? Behind the cabin, tomatoes, peppers, beans, maybe some herbs, rosemary and sage and mint." Clara smiled in the darkness. "My father used to grow mint, said it kept the mice away." "Did it? Not really. But it made the house smell nice. Like summer, even in the middle of January." Eli laughed. A small sound, barely more than a breath, but real. "What else?" he asked. Clara thought. Let the images form in her mind: the cabin, the garden, the life they would build together. A barn, she said. For the horses. And maybe some chickens. I like eggs in the morning. Chickens are loud. I don't mind. What about children? The question hung in the air. Clara's breath caught. Maybe, she said quietly. Someday. If. She turned to look at him. His eyes were half closed, heavy with exhaustion, but still watching her. If you want them, Eli's hand found hers. I want everything, he said. The cabin, the garden, the chickens, the children, all of it. His fingers tightened around hers. I've spent 15 years wanting nothing, running from everything. I'm done. I want a life, a real life, with you. Clara felt the words settle into her chest. Heavy, true. Then we'll have it, she said. All of it. Eli's eyes drifted closed. His breathing deepened, steadied. He slept. Clara sat beside him through the long hours of the night, watching the stars wheel overhead, listening to the wind whisper through the rocks. She did not sleep, could not sleep. Every sound made her tense, every rustle of brush, every cry of an owl. But no riders came. By the time dawn painted the eastern sky in shades of pink and gold, they were alone, safe. For now. They rode for 3 more days. Clara learned to read Eli's condition by small signs: the color of his skin, the brightness of his eyes, the steadiness of his hands on the reins. The fever rose and fell, spiking at night, receding by morning. She changed his dressing every few hours, forced water and food into him, talked to him constantly to keep him conscious. The landscape changed around them. The hills flattened into plains, dotted with scrub and cactus. The air grew drier, hotter. But there was water, small springs, muddy creeks, enough to fill their canteens and keep them moving. On the 3rd day, they saw it. Thornton. It was not much a cluster of buildings huddled around a crossroads, a water tower rising above the rooftops, a church steeple white against the blue sky. But to Clara, it looked like everything she had ever wanted. She pulled her horse to a stop on the ridge overlooking the town. We made it, she said. Eli drew up beside her. His face was pale, drawn with pain and exhaustion. But he was alive. He was upright. He was looking at the town with something that might have been wonder. We made it, he echoed. Clara reached over, took his hand. Ready? He turned to look at her, and despite everything, the fever, the wound, the days of running, he smiled. Ready? They rode down together. The doctor in Thornton was a woman. Clara had not expected that. Dr. Sarah Mitchell was small and gray-haired, with spectacles perched on her nose and hands that moved with the brisk efficiency of someone who had seen everything and been surprised by nothing. She took one look at Eli's wound and clicked her tongue. Who stitched this? I did, Clara said. Dr. Mitchell raised an eyebrow. First time. Yes. Not bad. Kept him alive. At least. She turned to Eli, who was lying on her examination table with his eyes closed. You're lucky. The bullet missed anything important. Another inch to the left, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. So he'll be all right, Clara asked, with rest and proper care. Yes, he's strong, stubborn. Dr. Mitchell's eyes moved to Clara. He needs at least 2 weeks of bed rest. No riding, no heavy lifting, no doing anything foolish. I'll make sure of it. See that you do. The boarding house was clean and quiet. Clara paid for a room with the last of Eli's money, a small space with a bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the main street. She helped Eli to the bed, covered him with the quilt, sat down in the chair beside him. 2 weeks, she said. You heard the doctor. I heard. Eli's eyes drifted open. What about Crenshaw? What about him? He's still out there. Still looking. Clara considered the question. She had thought about it constantly over the last 3 days, the threat that hung over them. The shadow that would not disappear just because they had outrun it. Maybe, she said. Or maybe he gave up. The fire, the distance, the cost of keeping those men on the trail. Maybe he decided I wasn't worth it. And if he didn't, Clara met his eyes, then we'll deal with it, together. She took his hand. I'm done running, done hiding. If he comes, he comes. But I'm not going to spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. Eli studied her face for a long moment. You've changed, he said. So have you. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Reckon we're even, then. The weeks that followed were quiet. Eli healed slowly, the fever breaking after 3 days. The wound closing cleanly under Dr. Mitchell's care. Clara stayed by his side, reading to him from books borrowed from the church, talking to him about everything and nothing, learning the small intimacies of sharing space with another person. She learned that he snored when he slept on his back, that he hated coffee but drank it anyway because it was easier than making tea, that he hummed hymns under his breath when he thought no one was listening, old songs from his childhood. Melodies she recognized from her own years at the orphanage. She learned that he laughed with his whole body, head thrown back, shoulders shaking, that he cried quietly, privately, turning his face away when the memories became too heavy, that he prayed before meals, not showy prayers, just a few whispered words, eyes closed, hands still. And she learned that she loved him, not the desperate, grateful love of someone rescued from danger, something deeper, quieter, the kind of love that grows in the spaces between words, in the silence of shared mornings, in the gentle weight of a hand held through the night. On the 14th day, Dr. Mitchell declared him well enough to travel. Take it slow, she said. No heroics. And if that wound opens up again, you come straight back. Yes, ma'am, Eli said. They left Thornton on a clear October morning. The air was crisp, carrying the first hint of autumn, the smell of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke. The road stretched before them, empty and open, leading west toward hills that glowed golden in the early light. Eli's land was exactly as Clara remembered it. The meadow, still green despite the season. The creek, running clear and cold over smooth stones, the live oaks, their leaves rustling in the gentle breeze, and rising above it all, the hill with the view that seemed to stretch forever. They stood at the edge of the meadow, their horses grazing nearby. The wagon Martha had sent after them loaded with supplies for the months ahead. Here, Eli said, pointing to a flat stretch of ground near the creek. This is where we'll build. Clara looked at the spot, imagined the cabin that would stand there, walls of wood and stone, a porch facing east, windows catching the morning light. It's perfect, she said. Eli took her hand. Clara. She turned to face him. He was standing straight now, his color restored, his eyes clear and bright. The wound had left a scar, a puckered line of pink flesh that would fade with time, but never quite disappear. He did not seem to mind. I've been thinking, he said, about what happens next. And I don't want to wait anymore. He reached into his pocket, pulled out something small, held it out to her. A ring, simple, silver. A tiny blue stone set in the center, catching the light like a piece of sky. It was my mother's, he said. She gave it to me before I left for the war. Told me to give it to the woman I wanted to spend my life with. He swallowed. I've been carrying it for 20 years. Never thought I'd find someone worthy of it. Clara's vision blurred. Eli. You don't have to answer now. I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other a few weeks, but I've never been more certain of anything. His voice was steady. Sure, I love you. Clara Whitmore. I want to build this life with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to raise children with you and grow old with you and be buried next to you when the time comes." He held the ring out, waiting. "Will you marry me?" Clara looked at the ring, at the man holding it, at the meadow and the creek and the hills stretching toward the horizon. She thought about the depot where he had found her, the fire where he had fed her, the wagon seat where they had shared their stories, the blood she had cleaned from his wound, the fever she had nursed him through, the nights she had lain awake listening to him breathe. She thought about everything they had survived to reach this moment, and she knew, had known, perhaps, from the very beginning that there was only one answer. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." Eli's face broke into a smile, pure, radiant, the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms and held her tight. Clara pressed her face against his chest, listened to his heartbeat, felt the solid warmth of him, alive and real and hers. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too." His lips brushed her hair. "Always. Forever." They stood there for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, while the sun climbed higher and the meadow glowed gold around them. They were married 3 weeks later. The ceremony was small, just Dr. Mitchell, who had traveled from Thornton to serve as witness, and a circuit preacher who happened to be passing through. They stood beneath the live oak at the edge of the meadow, the autumn leaves drifting down around them like blessings from heaven. Clara wore a dress she had made herself, simple blue cotton, nothing fancy. Eli wore his cleanest shirt and the hat he had worn the day they met, battered and dust-stained, but somehow perfect. The preacher spoke words about love and commitment and the bonds that hold two people together through whatever storms may come. Clara barely heard them. She was too busy looking at Eli, at the tears on his cheeks, at the smile on his lips, at the way his hand trembled when he slipped the ring onto her finger. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the preacher said. "You may kiss your bride." Eli kissed her, and Clara Callahan, no longer Whitmore, no longer auction girl, no longer anyone's property, kissed him back. The cabin took all winter to build. They worked together, side by side, learning as they went. Eli taught Clara how to swing an axe, how to notch logs so they fit tight, how to mix mud and lime for chinking. Clara taught him how to cook over an open fire, how to preserve vegetables for the long months ahead, how to make a house feel like a home. Spring came slowly. The meadow turned green. The creek ran high with snowmelt from the distant hills. And one morning, Clara woke to find wildflowers blooming outside their window, blue and yellow and white, carpeting the ground like a promise kept. She stood on the porch, watching the sunrise, her hand pressed against her stomach. Eli came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" Clara smiled. "The future," she said. "Our future." She took his hand, moved it to her belly. For a moment, he did not understand. Then his eyes widened. "Clara, are you—" "Yes." Eli stared at her. Then he laughed, that full-body laugh she had come to love, and swept her into his arms, spinning her around until they were both dizzy and breathless. "A baby," he said, setting her down. "We're going to have a baby. We're going to have a baby." He pulled her close, held her tight. "I love you," he murmured against her hair. "So much." Clara closed her eyes, breathed in the scent of him, sweat and wood smoke and home. "I love you too." Behind them, the cabin stood solid against the morning sky. Before them, the meadow stretched toward hills that glowed gold in the rising sun. And between them, growing slow and sure, a new life waited to begin. The end. Epilogue. Years later, when their children asked how they met, Clara would tell them about a dusty road and an abandoned depot, about a wagon that stopped when it did not have to, about a stranger who offered water to a woman with nothing left. She would tell them about the fire and the flight and the long nights of fear, about the wound she stitched and the fever she nursed and the morning they finally reached safety. But mostly, she would tell them about the moment she first heard his voice, rough and unused, offering her something as simple as water, and knew, somehow, that her life was about to change. "Your father saved me," she would say, her voice soft with memory. "And then I saved him. And then we saved each other, over and over, for the rest of our lives." The children would listen, wide-eyed, and ask if it was all true. And Clara would smile, looking across the room at Eli, older now, gray-haired, still handsome in a weathered sort of way, and say, "Every word." Outside, the meadow stretched golden in the afternoon light. The creek sang its endless song, and on the porch of the cabin they had built together. 2 rocking chairs sat side by side, worn smooth by years of quiet evenings and shared silences. Home. At last. Some stories stay with us long after the last page turns. Clara and Eli's journey was never about grand heroics or sweeping adventure. It was about something simpler and truer, 2 weary souls finding each other on a dusty road, choosing to stop running, and building a home from the wreckage of their pasts. They remind us that kindness costs nothing, but can change everything. That a single moment of courage stopping when we could keep moving, offering help when we could look away, might be the very thing that saves us both. Thank you for walking this road with them. May their story bring you comfort, the way a warm fire and good company can ease even the longest night. Disclaimer. This is a work of fiction inspired by classic Western romance literature, created solely for entertainment purposes. This story does not condone, encourage, or promote any form of violence or harmful behavior. All characters, names, and events are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or deceased, or actual events is purely coincidental.